Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 NFL video. And for some strange reason, you'll be probably thinking, what the hell is he thinking? Because I'm going to be talking about the top 10 Seattle Seahawks of all time. And no, it's not because, well, the Seahawks beat the Pats in the Super Bowl and given the Pats their sixth Super Bowl loss, which means we are the worst Super Bowl team for losses. Although we're the best. We've had six titles tied for first, but we got the most and the most wins and losses. No, it's to do with my good buddy Jason Lundgren over in Washington State and how he's a big Seattle Seahawks fan and all that. And I figured, well, I don't have hate for the Seattle Seahawks. Why the hell would I? I mean, it's one Super Bowl apiece. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the top 10 Seattle Seahawk players of all time. So buckle up. Here we go. Number 10 is Walter Jones, legendary left tackle, considered one of the best in NFL history. Not a lot of people talk about the offensive line enough in the NFL, but I feel like I should with this one because I think Walter Jones, I think he's in the Hall of Fame, was a pretty good left tackle and all that, trying to protect the quarterback and protect the running backs and all that and protect everybody. And he worked out quite well for the Seahawks. So you got to give him some credit. Number 9 is Cortez Kennedy. I thought that Cortez's name was French for brain, like Minos et Cortex, Animaniacs in French, but it's Cortex with EX, not EZ. Cortez Kennedy was a great defensive tackle and a Hall of Famer. He was known for his strength and agility, and he was a great guy in the 80s and 90s for the Seahawks and all that. Yeah, he got to the Hall of Fame, which is pretty good, and he was a good defensive tackler. Number 8 is Cam Chancellor. You got to feel for him. Like Cam Chancellor, part of the Legion of Boom defense, and yes, there will be a few others that will be part of the Legion of Boom. But I think that Cam Chancellor is the lure of the guys. I mean, he was a hard-hitting safety, a key member of the defense, and he, kind of underrated. So he fits the bill quite well. Number 7 is Earl Thomas, known for being pivotal in Super Bowl 48 when they crushed the Broncos in the Fine Powder by 35 points. He was a good safety alongside Cam Chancellor and a playmaker. I mean, made a few plays. I can't remember who made those big interceptions. I think it was Malcolm Smith, who was the MVP of Super Bowl 48 and should be on this list, but no. Anyway, I do know that there are a few offensive players that I didn't put on this list. I should, but whatever. Earl Thomas was okay. Number 6 is Bobby Wagner. He was a good linebacker, a defensive anchor, and part of the Legion of Boom defense on the whole side of things. But yeah, Bobby Wagner showed his colors and all that, and I think for him in the Seattle Seahawks, it worked out quite well. I mean, can't complain. All that. Number 5 is Richard Sherman, the leader of the Legion of Boom defense. But yeah, Richard Sherman was big. Before he came to Seattle, he was an anomaly. Did you know that he was a wide receiver for the University of Stanford? And did you know that he played a part in one of the biggest upsets in that famous 2007 college football season? Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, Richard Sherman was a wide receiver. Stanford played number one USC, and USC was favored by more than 40 points. That's how bad it was. And then somehow, some way, Richard Sherman on 4th and 8 made a fantastic catch and then set Stanford up for first and goal. And then they won the game 24-23. So, yeah, so Richard Sherman was a wide receiver. They made him a defensive back in Seattle, and it worked well. You could pass block, you could pass deflect, and then he could catch interceptions. One of his biggest pass deflections was in the NFC title game against the San Francisco 49ers when he deflected the ball to a teammate who made the interception, and he basically ranted on Aaron Andrews about Crabtree trying to run on Richard Sherman. Crabtree was a wide receiver, Sherman was a defensive back, and Sherman basically made everyone realize that he was the bad guy here. Anyway, number 4 is Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch could have easily been a better player, but he was kind of underrated. Marshawn Lynch came from the University of Cal. He played for Buffalo and I remember when he went to Seattle, I was like, Buffalo's going to rue the day they get rid of Marshawn Lynch because he's a good running back. And I was right. Marshawn basically put on performance after performance for Seattle, known for breaking out the Skittles after each touchdown. Fans would actually throw Skittles packets down after his touchdowns. But his playoff performances were big. In 2011, when the Seahawks won the division with a 7-9 mark, they got to host the defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints in the wild card game, and beast mode performed, including that big 70-plus yard run against the Saints that basically made a mini quake in Seattle. And him, you know, uh, putting the stiff arm on Tracy Porter. It was just amazing what Marshall Lynch could do, and they threw the Skittles. In 2015, they could have used his Skittles, but they stupidly decided to have a pass at the 1 year line, thinking that, oh, well, they'll know about Marshawn Lynch. But Marshawn Lynch could have played beast mode. Yeah, they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I would have showed up saying, yeah, the better team won and all that. It would not haunt me like 2008. But yeah, Marshawn Lynch was just not utilized that well, and Seattle paid for it. Number 3 is Russell Wilson. Well, I didn't purposely put him at number 3 because his number was number 3 with Seattle. It's just the way I put it. I think that Russell Wilson is a pretty good quarterback. I mean, he's still active in the NFL. I forget. I say Pittsburgh, but no, I think it's with the Giants or was with the Giants. Yeah, Russell Wilson came from NC State and then Wisconsin, and then he went to Seattle to be a good quarterback. I know Seattle quarterbacks, a lot of people say Jim Sorn or Dave Craig were better as a pivot. And Jim Sorn was part of the first main attack. And also not on this list was Kurt Warner, Kurt with a C Warner, the running back from Penn State. But nevertheless, Russell Wilson knew what he had to do. He came in a few years into the league and helped Seattle get to the Super Bowl against the Broncos, crushed Peyton Manning like a paper cup. And then the next year, they almost won the Super Bowl. But Russell just had to throw that interception to Malcolm Butler. But Russell Wilson was mobile. He could run the ball too. He was basically given a lot of money by Seattle, and then they decided to trade him to Denver, and it bit them in the butt. Russell Wilson was nothing for Denver. Then he went to Pittsburgh and a few other teams with the Giants. He's just basically playing out the string. Seattle brought out the best of him. Other teams brought out the worst in him. Number 2 is Kenny Easley, a dominant safety, 1980s defensive leader. He should be in the Hall of Fame soon, but he tragically passed away. Was it last year or this year? I think it was last year. But yeah, Kenny Easley was a pretty good defender, number 45 in your programs. The Seahawks in the 1980s weren't that bad. I mean, they were mediocre, but they had their moments. They shocked the Miami Dolphins in the 1983 playoffs by beating them and getting to the AFC title game. And yes, that was Dan Marino's inaugural year. But yeah, Kenny Easley had good defense. Seattle got to a few playoff spots, but they weren't really that big of a team until the 2000s. But yeah, Kenny Easley is basically the Hall of very good. And finally, numero is Stevie Largent. Steve Largent is a great wide receiver, a franchise icon, and the first person you think of Seattle if you're not thinking about Russell Wilson. But yeah, Steve Largent is an icon. I think that Steve Largent is good with number 80 and all that. Came from the University of Tulsa. He was a good wide receiver that I can't remember who did Tampa have him and dumped him off, but someone had Largent and dumped him off. And then he ended up going to Seattle and all that. And it worked out quite well for him. Sorn and Craig were throwing him the balls and all that. He was, you know, big and everything. Uh, he had the most consecutive games with a completion for a while. So he had all these receiving yards and all that. He was the wide receiver in the 1980s before Jerry Rice came in and ruined it. But yeah, Steve Largent is famous for a play. Was it 1987 or 88 when he caught a ball for Seattle and then he was trying to get a ball and then it was picked up by a Denver player and then Largent came out of freaking nowhere, hit the guy who picked off the ball, and that Denver player fumbled the ball and Largent recovered the ball. So yeah, Steve Largent had a little ball of hate to him. But yeah, Steve Largen's an icon, and he's always going to be a Seattle icon. So there you go. There's some great Seattle Seahawk players, and to show that I'm not a bitter Patriot fan. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond at Duke.